Good. I just want to say about Tori, real quick before we just move on. And Tori and I started writing songs. I think I'm 2 years older than her, so she was 16 and I was 19, and we started writing long before we got married. And she was dating me before we had anything. And so it wasn't like, here's this guy and he's singing in front of thousands of people. I mean, I didn't have anything, and basically she didn't either. And when we stayed together, and but she always supported me, and she could have said, don't go out on the road, stay here, let's get married, get a job when we start, home. She never did, never
Yeah.
did. And that's rare. That's really rare from somebody
Yeah.
that I know.
Yeah. It is. And sometimes those are the relationships that are the strongest over time. Is
Yeah.
because you started together, you started the stream together. And, man, I know you may talk about this here in a little bit, but, Tori's just been somebody for you that, man, would you have made it this far without her?
I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have. I would not be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for her.
Wow. Well, we'll get into the story of all that here in just a little bit, but
Sure.
obviously, I want to continue to talk about your music. I mean, "We Will Stand" was was the big song off of that record, right? And we would call that probably your career song as a
Yep.
solo artist at that point. And man, still today, that song, I hear it gets re-recorded, and it's just a hallmark, a standard of that era of Christian music.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I was trying to write for the new record, and there was a lot of racism here in Nashville. I mean, there's a lot of violence, and the record, I was referring to that. But another reference that was real important to me it's like the Baptists would bring me in, and none of the Assemblies of God would come.
Hmm.
Or the Assembly would bring me in, and the Baptists would come, and it was just, I don't know. There was no cooperation back then, and I was just saying, why? And with the racism, why? But that I remember it was 4 a.m. I was, I always write better at night, and I had this chorus: "You're my brother, you're my sister, so take me by the hand. Together we'll work until he come. There's no foe that can defeat. Walk in long as love we can." And I ran upstairs. She was sound asleep. And I said, listen. I told her the lyrics. That's really good. But yeah, all the songs pretty much. If we didn't write them, she is part of the process of helping pick, because she is, I don't know, she's a real poet. I see a lot of writers, but Tori's always been a poet. And to me anyway, she was.
Yeah.
But
and then of course Metals, was, I mean, I think you're going to have people go back and forth. A lot of people think probably most your iconic album was your self-titled album, which is amazing. But for me, the probably the most iconic solo record of that era was Metals. I mean, I wore that thing out.
Yeah, it was the biggest selling record that I've ever.
I believe it.
It was that record, and I don't know. Jack Wegg and I produced it together, and Jack was such a major part of that record. He and I worked together during the We Will Stand record, Walls of Glass, and so he would. There was a lot of times Sinead wasn't there, and Jack and I would work together, vocals and things like that. And so we got really, really good acclaim. But he was just a second engineer to. And so when it came time to do the next record, I just really and made it kind of a deal breaker with Word. It's like he and I are doing it, he and I are doing it, and making records was so hard. And there were really difficult moments for Sinead, real difficult moments, and tense moments. But that record from the get-go was so much fun. We were two kids in a candy store,
You can tell you guys are having a blast on that record.
Yeah, and I mean, we were finding songs, we were writing songs, and there were some real sad points of the Walls of Glass record. There were, in fact, I wound up getting an ulcer making that record because it got so difficult at times. And so when it came time for the next one, it's like, you know what, I want to be with Jack. We laugh and play and go to, lunch and all that. So that was a point in time when Jack and I were just left alone. And we got in there, started looking for songs, and he starts bringing in all these A players, and so, I mean, I'd be dancing while I was singing. I mean, these grooves and things like that, and I don't know, that was just. But from the get go to the end of it, it was this smile on my face and smile on Jack's face, and.
Yeah.
He trusted me and I trusted him. I mean, and it was a good melding of musical influences. But
And
no,
I remember seeing you on that tour too. Same place, Waco Hall in Waco, Texas, on the Baylor University campus. You had that blue blazer on with the that, and I was like, okay, this is a real thing. This is like any of the. I'd never been to a pop show, so I couldn't compare it to that. But I was like, okay, this is a real artist who knows who he is, and like that was just a big deal for me. Yeah, I'm not trying to make it come back to me. I'm just, I love being able to hear these stories. It's just incredible.
It's an honor for us to talk about this, and it's just an honor because the answers that I'm giving you, you know it when I say the first three words because you've lived it too.
Yeah. It's amazing how similar all of our journeys are.
Yeah.
When you boil it down, yeah. And then your third record was the self-titled record, and the themes got a little darker.
Very. And I will tell you why. Toward the end of Metals, I started drinking. I remember being in New York and with Tori's brother. He played oboe for the New York Philharmonic, and those old voices in my head that I grew up with. You're not worth the bullet shoot you with. You're not worth the salt that goes on your bread, and you'll never amount to anything. Constant. Till it gets to the point that when you leave home, you're saying it to yourself. And I would win a Grammy. And you go to the after parties and everybody's clapping and having fun, especially if you won. And I would get back to the hotel, and within an hour it's gone. They just don't belong to me. It belonged to somebody else. And there was always that, no matter how wonderful things happen, and I felt unworthy. I don't deserve this. I'm not worth the bullet street with, I'm not worth the salt on the, and you'll never amount to anything. And I remember I never drank because of my dad, but social drinking is, in Nashville, even back then, I'd play golf with guys and they'd have a beer and I have a Coke, and people would have wine with dinner, and it's that I just know I'm different, always did, and because of my daddy and stuff. So I was in New York, there was no more Cokes in the refrigerator, and it was fifth floor, July, it was hot. And I said, well, some of my buddies drink, and I'm hot, I'll just have a beer. And not knowing the door I was opening, but innocently, I drank that beer. And immediately I began to feel something. And I opened the second one. And I felt better, and I had the third, and all of those voices went away. Andy in that apartment there by myself, Tori was out, and I lifted my hands and I began to worship God.
Wow.
I can live this way. I can live this way. There's no guilt. There's no shame. There's no beating myself up. I'm just free. I'm just free. And I began to worship God, not knowing within 6 months, that my life would be a living hell.
Wow.
But that was what attracted me to it. And there's a euphoria, life's great. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And then it turns on you with a vengeance. I mean, it turns on you with a vengeance, and you start hiding, you start lying, you do anything to protect that secret because you're terrified people are going to find out. And when you're in front of thousands of people, who can you tell? You know, and fortunately, there's a lot of big pastors that crash and burn. Who can they talk to? You
Right.
know,
That's right. There's a
so
loneliness in that position, isn't there?
oh man, and you don't trust anybody. You
Yeah.
just, who can we trust that? I'm on television, I'm touring, and all of that. And who would take that information and use it against me? I mean,
Yeah.
there's all kind of reasons. Um, but after medals, and my habit got pretty bad, and I would fight with Tori to keep her going out on the road with me. And I never drank before a show. Um, I would, but it would be waiting for me because I had to have it now. If I didn't, I'd start shaking. But you talking about hating yourself, I turned into my dad,
Wow.
and I hated me. I could not even look myself in the mirror to shave. That's how much I hated myself, and I
Mm.
had turned into this person that I never wanted to be, and here I am, and I'm stuck. And I hid from Tori. I hid from my parents. I mean, Mama June, and hid from other people of my family and try to hold my breath. But I would have to leave and go get something to stop the shakes. It got that bad, and it's interesting that um, Tori came to me and she said, "I'm not living this way anymore. I'm not living this way. You've turned into somebody I don't know. And I don't like this person. And so I'm leaving you, and I'm looking, getting a lawyer, and we're going to start talking about divorce." And all that I'd been through my childhood on, and she was always my rock. She loved me unconditionally, and she would always could bring me back around when I'd start, getting lost in the things that my parents did to me. She could always bring me back, but now she's leaving, and I know I'm just going to spit out. She was my last thread to humanity, to my humanity. So she said, "I'm leaving unless you get help." And there was a friend of mine that knew treatment centers. I didn't know treatment center. He said they can help. So I go to the treatment center, and for 30 days, they're teaching me about. In 1957, the American Medical Association put alcoholism in a disease category, like tuberculosis, like cancer. Alcoholism is in that it carries a label as a disease also. And what they told me there is like, you're not a bad person trying to get good. You're a sick person trying to get well. And so we will tell you how to address this, how to get better. We'll introduce you to AA and give you tools. Okay, I get out of that treatment center and I start going to AA. And one of the guys that's a little older than me, he was actually with me when I was the Imperial we were at Word, and when I was solo record at Word, the first one. And his name was Walt Quinn. And he's been with me since day one of my going to AA. And
Wow.
and he's probably, I don't know, 10 years older than me, maybe. I don't know. But I started going to AA, and I started kind of getting my life back together. And word came, and they said, "We need another record, and right now." And I couldn't write. I was just trying to keep my world together and trying to keep Tori, and I was so new sober. And it takes a while to get your life back when you've
Yeah.
destroyed so bad. And so, and I couldn't go to work and say, "I can't yet. I can't." They didn't know. And nobody knew.
Yeah.
And so Jack Puig and I started talking, and he knew something was different in me. I didn't tell him, but he knew something was different. But he knew I was having a few more beers than normal at the end of medals. The disease hadn't really kicked in yet, but I was kind of gravitating, and And I said, I can't do that record I did last time. I can't. I couldn't write. I was lost. I mean, I love Jesus. He was part of my life, but where do you go when your life has just crashed and burned? I mean,
How do you make a record in that during that season of your life? And that's
and it's like, I can't make medals because I'm not there.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
at a totally different place. Um, and so Lynn Nichols from Word, he was helping some A&R, and he brought me a song, and I hadn't brought anything to the record. I'd sit down and my brain was just, the chemicals were still trying to balance out. And he played I Still Believe.
wow, from the call. Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
from the pain, through the grief, through the
Yeah.
heartache, through the lies, through the storms, through the cries, through the wars, I still believe. And I started crying. I was standing out on the deck of the Newport Beach Hotel.
Hmm.
And he walked out, had me come out there, and he played me that song. And I started crying. I said, if I could say anything right now, that's exactly what I would say. And I said, Lynn, I want the song. And he said, well, Michael Bean wrote it, and he's in a group called The Call, but they're not truly in our field.
Yeah.
He said, and we began to make preparation. Other songs begin to come. Charlie Peacock, Down in the Lowlands, Hear My Cry, Hear My
Great. Oh,
Save
great
Me.
song.
And
Yeah.
that's where I was. I was in that psalm,
Hmm.
I was in one of the David Psalms. It's like, save me, I'm dying. And I'm trying to find my way. And I just so resonated with that. I wrote several songs, James and I, asking Tori to stay. This love is strong. It's going to last. It'll hold
Wow.
you up if you need it. Don't get up because it's unshakable. And don't leave me, basically, is what that song. And so I wasn't in medals anymore at that moment in time. But the danger of that was everything was PTO. We're blessed, we're blessed, we're blessed. We are blessed. We don't deserve it, but yet we are blessed.
Yeah.
It was everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, I've got a record that's like a Psalm of David that he's crying out, save me, save me, save me. I remember Tori saying, do you want to be this honest? Do you want to be this honest? There's a price to pay for this. And I took it to Word. Nobody liked it.
Wow.
Nobody. And they've just spent close to $300,000 on a record. And trust me with it. And I've given them something that they just don't, they're thinking, how are we going to market this? It doesn't fit this PTO world of we're blessed, we're blessed, we're blessed, and life's good, life's good, life's right, and but Lauren Ballman told me
No, I
that
love Lauren.
he was the only one that told me, he said, Russ, this will be a career record.
Wow.
It will be a career song for you, even though Word doesn't like it right now. And he said, but just hang on. It'll be a career record.
I was in Truth when that record came out, and I remember all the band guys. Of course, I was a metals guy, right? So I'm gonna
Sure.
bend that direction first. But all the band guys that I traveled with were just like they couldn't stop listening to it. So everybody was my age that was hungry for something honest and musical and deep, just gravitated towards that album.
Right.
And I still listen to it once a month, probably. I mean, it's still just it's so good.
And you know who comments on that song more than anybody? Pastors.
Wow.
Pastors.
Hmm.
The first compliment I got about that was a pastor that said, you gave me permission to be honest. You said something that I couldn't say. But I don't know. I mean, it sold a lot. Don't get me wrong, it sold a lot. But I knew the career would suffer because I wasn't metal too, and that's what everybody wanted. They wanted metal too, but but there's still, that's a huge request when I say live, do I still believe? Do I still believe?
Yeah. And then did you take a break for a little while after that album came out?
Yeah. Yeah, I had to take a break. You know, the pressure from Word to make it, and there's a friend of mine. His name is John Hyatt, and he's written songs from Bonnie Raitt, Bob Dylan, a couple
Yeah.
of, and he was a dear friend of mine from AA. And I said, I've got to go to LA and make a record, and I'm not ready, John. And he said, Russ, just go and trust those around you. Just trust them. You know, you don't have a clear, you know, a couple of songs that you want to do, but he said trust them. And I trusted Jack, and I trusted Jane Callahan, I trusted Lynn Nichols, and but they knew when something would happen, whether it resonated with me, you know. But that, I don't know. After all of these years, it's that Metals are the two records that people remember the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you imagine back in our years when we first started, the amount of money that was spent making records?
Oh my
I
gosh.
mean,
I know. Yeah. On our album, we talk about this. There's going to be a For Him conversation on this podcast coming up soon, but we were talking about this with the other guys the other day about how much we spent on the Message album and the Ride album because Omar wasn't cheap.
oh
Omar
Lord,
in the
yeah,
mid 90s, Omar was not cheap. And we went after some secular producers, and it was staggering. I still don't know that we paid back those budgets
I didn't.
30 years later.
Yeah,
Because
I
you can
did.
make a great record now for, you know,
Oh, yeah, $30,000. You can,
yeah. Oh
way
yeah.
under 100,000. You can make a
Oh yeah.
stellar. But
Yeah.
back then, man,
Hmm.
it
They were
just
opening those checkbooks, man, and just going,
boy,
'cause that tells you how much money they were making, right?
right. But even
Uh,
back then, sales were so much more than they are
yeah.
now.
Well, you
Our
can't sell anything now. No, there's no physical product.
They don't go to a
Yeah.
Christian bookstore and buy a CD like they did for
Hmm.
us. We
Yeah.
started, you know, it's a
Yeah.
different animal, but
Yeah. Well, Russ, I got
um,
to tell you, when I think about you, not only do I just think about one of my favorite artists of all time, Christian, non-Christian. I mean, just you're that guy to me. But getting to tour with you and getting to know you was just such a bonus. And some of my greatest memories of being on the road was being with you on. You went out and did a tour with us with For Him for a year, and then we did Child of the Promise together, and then we would just run into each other. And I just wanted to relive a couple of those moments if we could. I I remember that I had this conversation with Wayne when I had him on the podcast, but I'll never forget the conversation we had about the lady in Canada. We don't have to go through all of it. If you want to
yeah.
listen to this story, go listen to my
And
conversation with Wayne
she
Watson.
hooked a bunch of us, man. She hooked a bunch of us.
But I'll never forget sitting on the bus. It was Omar and us and Wayne and you. And Wayne started telling the story, and you blurted out the lady's name, and the whole bus just erupted. I mean, we laughed for days about that. And then the other thing I really remember was on the Child of the Promise, you played an angel. Your character was an angel. Was it Michael? And
No,
you
I
were
played Gabriel.
Gabriel.
Now,
Right. That's right. Right.
yeah,
Right. You played Gabriel. And they had you up on what would you
cherry
call
picker.
that? A cherry picker.
Cherry picker. You go up like 25 feet in the air.
Yep. Yep. And that thing wasn't very stable. And we're in front of 10,000 people. And I just remember being backstage and the curtain closed, or you came out of the spotlight and that thing wouldn't come down. And you're
Oh,
screaming, "Get me down."
I hated that. I hated that.
Oh,
But one of my memories too is I'd have M&Ms and I'd be chucking them at you guys before you went
yeah,
out.
that's right. You definitely know know how to have fun on the road. In fact, when we were setting up this interview, this conversation, we talked on the phone, and you said you're on the phone with Bill Gaither, and it's just laughter all the time. You know, I know that being out on the road with you has got to be just a joy, and I'm so glad that you are in the position you're in now to continue to do what you love to do and can laugh and tell stories about the past, and that
Yeah.
just, you know, that encourages me about the road that I have ahead of me as well.
Well, you just can't take yourself serious because you can't take credit for anything, and it's all him, you know. And if it all falls apart tomorrow, whatever, you know, I didn't do anything to deserve it. He just did it, you know.
Yeah.
And if in your own mind you can just get off the stage in your own mind, you know, and allow yourself to be human. And Tori has been such a big part of that. And my friends that's in Nashville here with me, they, you know, I'm just Russ. In fact, Don Finto, man, me and Amy were going to his church, and Michael W. And years ago. And he told me, he said, Russ, surround your people that people just know you as Russell, you know, just that know you as Russell. And I've been able to find that. A lot of my friends are not musicians. They're not, you know, and some of them don't even know what I do.
I think that's so cool. That's one of the things I really longed for at a certain point in my For Him career. I longed just to be known as Andy,
Yeah,
you know, the guy that lives at, you know, on Mockingbird Lane. I mean,
right.
that's, I want to go to church with my family and
Yes.
not be looked at as anybody different
And
than,
people run up and ask for your autograph, and
yeah.
yeah.
Well, in Nashville, it always feels like one of the reasons I never wanted to live in Nashville is because I always felt like I was, I was working.
Oh yeah.
Like always, even if I'm at the grocery store or at a coffee shop or at a restaurant, you're making connections with other industry people and you're setting up
Oh yeah.
meetings and
Yeah.
you're talking about
Right.
business. And, you know, to be able to live in Mobile or Orlando and now in Tulsa, you know, I never felt that pressure of being on all the time.
And you get off the stage when
Yeah.
you Bill. I mean, you get off the stage here. I
Hmm.
hated. We moved to Bell Buckle 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and it's a little town outside of Nashville. Tori used to bring me out here for the last 30 years, and just a day trip, you know, when I was home. And it's got a little restaurant, 450 people, but it's got, but it has like the poet laureate of Tennessee lives here, and it's just a quirky little town, but the people are great country folks. And most of the people in this town don't know who I am. You know, they know who I am. But when I lived in Nashville, I guess we've been out here 10 years now, but you know, I would go to Music Row, drive down Music Row, and there's all these billboards. I mean, and banners hanging on the buildings. Number one hit, you know, number one hit, and you know, top of the chart when number one, and you driving down that, and it's like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, I gotta work hard, I gotta work hard, and you can't relax. But living out here the last 10 years, it's like I fly to the airport or come back on the bus and I leave. And as soon as I cross the Nashville city line, it's country. And I come down and I hear I'm just Russ, you know, um, and nobody bugs me. In fact, there's been people that come to this town and heard I live here. Shop owners won't tell them where I live.
That's cool.
I'm gonna say they're like post office and the hostess at Baboka Cafe. People want. I heard Russ lives here. Where does he live? And they won't tell them. You know, so you don't have people showing up on your doorstep. Um, and I will live longer and I'll live happier. You know, just being in a small community of 450 people that I'm just Russell, and they don't think I'm special. You know, they don't know Grammy, they don't know whatever, but I love that. And I know you have the same thing where you live. But I had to get out of Nashville to realize that was missing, you know, in my life. But it's been just such a godsend. And before we wrap up, I want to say one more thing, just whenever you are through.
Yeah. Go for it.
All right. All that I've been through, all the Grammys that I've won, all the tours that I've done, uh, I was asked a couple of years ago in an interview, this is what's the greatest thing that happened to you? And we both have stories, of the White House and I seen her, Royal Albert Hall in London. And but I said the greatest thing that happened to me after all I've been through is I found Jesus. I truly, truly found Jesus. All this other stuff just happened, but in my heart, uh, I mean, it took a while to break that Pentecostal condemnation out of me. But as the Holy Spirit began to work on it and begin to free me from that condemnation, free from that, and I let go of so many of the traditions that I grew up in that just held me captive. And there was a point after that first treatment center, I was asking him, "Who are you? Who are all I know about you is what they told me and rules, that you're supposed to follow. Then you're a good person." And I left there going, "Who are you? Tell me who you are. I do believe there's somebody up there, but I don't know who you are, Jesus. Not I mean that he's somebody up there, but I don't know who you are. I knew what they told me about you." And Andy, even back that far, there's this quest that the Lord led me on. Is I'll show you. Now that you're looking, now that you're looking, you're ready for me to show you who you are. And every year it gets bigger and wider. Every year it gets bigger and wider. And now at 69 years old, he's huge. He's just huge. And I see his hand everywhere. And I don't talk about the accomplishments. I don't talk about doing all these wonderful things that God's allowed me to do, but I talk about Jesus. I talk about him anytime I get a chance anywhere. And but but peace comes, tranquility comes, joy comes, satisfaction comes. Everything you've looked for your whole life comes when you truly encounter Jesus. Not what they said about you, but what you discover when you go on your search. And I had to crash and burn before I let go of their ideas about who Jesus was and that he
Wow.
didn't like me very much. And I won't keep going on about it because you know exactly what I'm talking about. But to find him, gee, I'm at peace. I don't have to prove anything anymore. I don't care if I have big records anymore. I don't care if I close festivals now. I don't care about any of that stuff. It's just like God, just let me sing to somebody so I can tell my story about what you've done for me. So anyway, that is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me is I found Jesus.